Think that romantic comedies and profound themes don't mix? Today we're showing you how to blend genres and elements to create a romance story that goes beyond the usual. But buckle up and watch until the end, because this was a challenging ride.
Oh boy, it was nuts. It was a crazy experience for sure. I think one of the craziest in my life, and it's all a real balancing game. It's really obvious to say, but when you're in it and you're starting to spin those plates, or the characters, or the tone, or the plot.
That was Peter Sohn, the director of The Good Dinosaur, Partly Cloudy, and Elemental.
This idea of Elemental started in several places, but the main one being this question of what if fire fell in love with water? And that was sort of a simple hook that brought in the idea of romance and brought in the idea of elements and brought in the exploration into the romance genre.
The name of the genre says it all. The romantic comedy is a mix of romance and comedy. In its simplest form, the story goes like this. Girl meets boy, girl loses boy, girl gets boy back. The challenging element of writing a love story is creating a strong reason to keep your characters apart. If they meet, fall in love, and live happily ever after without any problems, there's not much of a story to tell. After all, conflict is the fuel that drives any good story.
Save it for the wedding! Hey!
By the way, I'm screenwriter Pietro Schito, and welcome back to Write for Animation. Subscribe to become a better storyteller. Love stories usually have a 7-step pattern that fits into the well-known 3-act structure. First, we meet the characters and see their everyday lives and the world they live in. Suddenly, our protagonists meet in a way that's so unlikely that feels like destiny. The couple spends time together and eventually falls in love. But they have big differences that lead to a major fight, and they decide to break up for good. But the breakup is too painful for both of them. They hit rock bottom, until eventually one of them has an epiphany and decides to make things right. So one of them makes a big romantic gesture to demonstrate their love. Finally, they get back together and live happily ever after.
I worked on several films here at PIXAR, and there was always this concept of like the road movie or the buddy picture, where you have two characters sort of getting to know each other, testing each other, and then through a cathartic sort of connection, they move forward and become friends. That world, how that sits next to a romance, it was very close. The difference for me from the movies that I had loved in the romance genre were that these two characters in a romance movie have holes in their lives. Mm-hmm. They have missing pieces of themselves that those two characters will fill in each other. All of a sudden, you really needed to understand, oh, what was the missing or broken piece of this character? You know, you started understanding like, oh, right. The secret to Moonstruck is that Cher and Nicolas Cage are both broken. That's what's missing. And all of a sudden, the characters start to form these puzzle shapes to them that all of a sudden you begin to see like, oh, they fit. And when discovering that they could fit, there was a real excitement for the audience to go, oh, these two pieces, even though they're missing these two characters, those puzzle pieces slip right into each other and they fit.
If you're loving this video, don't miss out on becoming our Patreon supporter. You'll help my team and me create more videos and gain instant access to the WFA Animation Academy. Connect with fellow storytellers, learn the craft, and discover the secrets to thriving in the animation industry. Join today at writeforanimation.com/academy, and I'll see you in our next session. Another important element in a romantic comedy is the connection of the genre's philosophy and the theme. In romantic stories, love equals happiness.
Having a North Star when you in animation is, for me, really important because the process takes so long, and what objectivity is a real game that you play for yourself, because like you look at the material over and over and over again and it loses meaning at some point. And so having some thing that you emotionally can always come back to as the reason why you're doing this was very useful for me through this, and that was connected to the father-daughter storyline.
Delivery.
It all connected to my father and mother had worked very hard for me and my brother to give us a life, and I had a moment where I got to thank them as an adult, and it was very emotional for me, and trying to understand my parents as people and what they had sacrificed became a North Star.
Good daughter. If you're scratching your head about the theme of your story, you're not alone. It's a tricky part of screenwriting. We've got a video that breaks it down so you can write stories with more depth. Check it out if you're interested. Now you understand the basics of a rom-com, but how can you break free from the genre's limitations?
The interesting thing was, even though the question was romantic, there were other pieces that weren't romantic. An immigration storyline and a father and daughter storyline that started to appear immediately as we were trying to build stakes, build sort of conflict within the world. And as we were looking at romance, we were looking at other genres as well. And early on, it really became about how to intertwine several different concepts.
You're lucky you're a cute couple.
Oh, we're
A
not.
trope that elemental twists is the classic love triangle. Amber isn't just torn between two romantic interests, she's grappling with her love for her family. It's a fresh take that adds layers to her character and the story. Think of genre tropes as guidelines, not gospel. The key is to take what's familiar and give it a little twist to keep your audience on their toes. You're not breaking the rules, you're bending them.
When we started thinking about Amber and Wade, all of a sudden the father came into picture, and then the love story became a triangle. As I remember pitching this, you think that this would be a story between a young woman falling in love with a young guy, but it's also a daughter falling in love with a father. That triangle sort of shifted the sort of the arcing of all the characters. It all of a sudden shifted, like you would balance into a romance, but then you would shift into a family drama. And that was very difficult. Amber was misunderstood something that she believed her whole life of what her father was doing, for his own dreams. And that started to build, where did those dreams come from? That comes from his own past. And what specificity could I connect that to? And that I started looking into my family lives and other immigrants' lives, other first-gen, second-generation people at PIXAR. They would all talk about going to a new country and not wanting to lose their identity, or that families didn't want to lose their identity. And then so thus that idea of the flashback was born, where we would see Bernie not getting approval from his own father in his homeland. And that was the equation. That was the emotional equation of like, he is broken because he feels like he didn't get approval because his own father thought he would lose a sense of his identity, of his culture and of his fireness and all that. And so he's been building a life to prove that he is fiery. He upholds those traditions. And not only that, his daughter will as well. And then, Amber discovers more about that in that equation of 1 + 1 = 2. The equation being, we understand what he left behind, plus not having the approval from his own father, equals Amber understanding it and then giving her father the bow. And so that was the emotional equation that we were reaching for, connected to The Shop Was Never the Dream.
All this becomes very important when we follow another classic beat, the grand gesture. That moment we all wait for in love stories, right? It's when one character makes a big, bold move to win back their love.
Wade? What are you doing here?
Now, in Elemental, we are all set up to think Wade is going to win Amber back by showing up at her store's grand reopening. But guess what? That's not what happens.
But, Amber,
I don't love you!
Instead, Wade goes above and beyond. He risks it all to save something deeply meaningful to Amber, the eternal flame.
I was hoping to make a more heroic entrance.
You came back!
It's not the grand gesture we thought we'd see, but it turns out to be an even more impactful one.
You gave me something people search for their whole lives.
But I can't exist in a world without you.
It's a twist that not only surprises, but also deepens the emotional stakes. Movies these days aren't stuck in one genre, and Elemental is a perfect example. It's a mashup of romantic comedy and coming of age. In coming-of-age films, the main character usually faces a life-changing moment that helps them grow. And that's exactly the journey that Amber takes in Elemental.
For Ember, I needed to understand what she was missing. Then the temper didn't just become this thing that just happened because she's fire. All of a sudden, it was the red herring that was covering up that hole. It's literally her interior knocking on the door to the exterior to tell her, look, you're missing something. You know, this shop is not for you.
I don't think I actually do want to run the shop, okay?
We added these other layers in terms of like how devoted she is. I used to think it was duty, where it was just about, you know, I have to do this for my father, but it's devotion. It is, I do this out of love, which is such a different thing. Understanding what that main character is for in the film, how you're using this character, and then layering character traits to support what that is.
Because this place is his dream. But I never once asked what I wanted to do.
I grew up with animation, loving them because of how universal it was. You know, that I could jump into the shoes of an elephant. I could jump into the shoes of characters that weren't necessarily my race, and totally connect and root for these characters. And so that was a big piece of the beginning of this. Romance or not, like it was just this world of fantasy characters that you're like, oh, can we even have an audience connect to these abstract beings?
Thank you, Peter. Now, don't shy away from embracing genres as another tool in your writer's toolkit. Let me know in the comments what movie genres you're curious about, and we might just cover it next. And hey, one of the classic rom-com tropes is the falling in love montage. Click on this video to learn how to write an exciting montage that will help you convey a lot of story in a short span of time. I'm Pietro, this is Write for Animation, and I'll see you in the video.